how long to wait to coat over epoxy. So anytime you're using a lacquer over epoxy or a 2K filler primer, you're going to want to wait till that primer cures. And that's normally about an hour to an hour and a half. Longer, the better. So if you can wait 2 hours or 3 hours or the next day, that's fine. But rule of thumb, 90 minutes, give or take, for epoxy primer to cure. Okay. How long should I wait after base coat to color sand and buff my roll pan? Longer, the better. Okay. So if you're doing a customer job in a body shop, a lot of these jobs got to go in and out, right? So, with most clear coats nowadays, you can color sand and buff the next day. Okay. But that doesn't mean that the paint completely cured. You can still let it cure a week or 2 weeks and still, have time and have it, give it the time it needs to properly cure. So I would say 2-3 weeks if you're not in a rush. Longer the better, to color sand and buff. But if you have to buff it, the day or two afterwards after painting, then you could absolutely do that. Cletus Bloom says, Cletus, good news. I finally painted my car. I messed up, didn't check my new compressor setup for water. Even with 2 inline filters, couldn't get it to stop misting water while painting. Should I sand and clear? Should you sand and clear? So did you stop on the base coat stage? Does that mean you didn't get to clear coating? Yeah, and make sure to drain your tank before painting, okay? And maybe in the middle of painting, depending on your air compressor size. So if you're running a very small air compressor, like a 30-gallon, 33-gallon or something like that, and you're kind of, it's on a lot, building a lot of condensation, you're going to want to drain it multiple times. But a bigger 60-gallon like mine, you really don't have to drain it. I've painted my complete full van in here with this thing. I painted a BMW in here, complete with no draining, pretty much just draining it right before I start and then, afterwards for the next job. Did you have your little insurance filter at the end of your gun? Like, I always like to have a little insurance filter. I don't want to disconnect right now because I have this mic set up here. Not sure if it's going to make a difference, but I don't want to unplug and then have an issue. But I do have, hold on one second. So this is actually great insurance to have these little filters here. It's a water filter at the end of your, at the end of your gun here. You could use them for 15 to 20 paint jobs. Okay. Maybe 10 completes, 15, 20, half touch-ups or whatever. They last a long time. For $6 or $7, whatever they cost nowadays, super great little water filter insurance piece right here. Super, super good. So, you drain your tank, you have your filter on the wall or near, off of your tank, 15 feet, 10 feet, give or take. You make sure all that is drained and clean. And then you got this last minute. So as long as you have that, you should be good. Maybe it was maybe it was really cold in your area and that air compressor was getting very hot and you were just building a lot of condensation, It's single stage. So if it's single stage, you could try to sand and buff it. Try it. Depending on how much paint you got on there, you could, if you got like little bubbles of water in it, you could try to sand that out and buff it. I would give it a shot. Start with like 1200 grit, see how it's coming out, go down to 1500 grit. You could buff 1500. But then if you feel like you could go a little bit more, then go with 2000, then buff that. Is Euro Clear worth it or just a marketing scheme? I think it's just marketing, Euro, anything Euro or, JDM, for Japan. It sounds good in marketing, but I like House of Color clears for premier clears. I like Deltron PPG clears. DuPont makes really good clears. If you're looking for a good clear and inexpensive, the Acme clear has been really good to me. I've been using that clear a lot, and there's no dieback in it. It dries glossy and it stays glossy, which is really nice. And about $100 a kit. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. Been getting really good results with that. So yeah, that's pretty much my go-to clear right now. I epoxy primed my fenders about a year ago. I'm pretty sure you're saying fenders. You put finders, but I'm thinking it's fenders. Finish with 320 grit. Should I sand it again? Use Eastwood roll-on. Absolutely. Of course, you want to sand it. If you want to sand it, you could get it down. I don't know if you want to paint directly over it. Okay. You could paint directly over it, or you could put a 2K filler primer on top of that. So if you're going to be putting another primer on top of that, right, you could sand it with 320 again. Just get it sanded, and then put a 2K filler primer on top of that. Sand it with 320, and then finish it off with a 400 dry or wet, and you'd be ready for paint. Hopefully that helps. But if you want to paint over the epoxy, which you can paint right over that. Finish with 400 grit and then paint over it. When I paint pearl, sometimes I get a pile sand when putting the mid coat using waterborne. How can I avoid pile sand? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Pile sand? Like, I don't get it. Do you mean like dry? Is it dry? Are you talking about like it's spraying dry? If it's spraying on dry, you're probably spraying with too high of an air pressure, or you're not reduced enough. So you might want to reduce down your mid coat a little bit more. I'm not sure if you're meaning like a sandy texture. So maybe you want to kind of get back to me on that and let me help me out a little bit better. Not bad. I'm going to repaint it. What do you suggest to do? 400 wet, then respray? I heard it's bad to paint over layers of paint. I mean, it's not bad to paint over layers of paint, but if you're going on 3, 4, or 5 layers, yeah, it's pretty bad. But if it's like a third layer, it's not that bad. Any more than 3 layers, I would kind of rethink it, and maybe take it down. So I'm not sure what you got going on there. But if you're just going to be doing a respray like that, you should be fine. I would let that dry good. It's a single stage. I would let it sit for 2 weeks. Let that thing dry really well before you start sanding it. Okay. Let it dry really well. Then go ahead, and you might want to use like a 320 to take out the orange peel, take out the paint texture, flatten it out. And if you're going to be painting with a single stage again, you could paint directly over a 320, or you could even go down to 360. 400 is a little overkill for single stage because single stage is a very thick paint. You can cover 320 pretty easily. So just FYI. So if I were you, cut it down with a 320. You could even cheat, go with a 280 if you really want to get down quick, and then finalize with like a 320 to 360. Then you could put some new paint and clear drips from top lid. Okay, so it's the gun, it's the lid. So if the paint and clear is dripping from the lid, it's the lid. So you need a new lid, or a trick that I do sometimes if I have a lid that shrinks. If you have a paint lid you're talking about, are you talking about the connection between, you said you're using a plastic cup. Okay, so if you're using a plastic cup and you have sometimes a spacing issue, what I like to do is use a little bit of Teflon tape and go over that one time, and then you should have a good seal. Because it does happen every once in a while, not just to atom gun, for any spray gun. It's the connection here. So what I like to do sometimes, I have that issue as well. Like you get a little leak here, Teflon tape around that orifice there, right? That connects into here. One Teflon tape around it, or you could even go 2. It'll give you a snug connection over here. You'll be fine. I thought you were talking about a regular paint cup lid that goes inside the metal cup. Even that, sometimes those lids shrink over time as you put them in reducers and lacquer thinner and you wash them over time. Sometimes they shrink. And what I do sometimes is you could put a piece of masking tape around it and it'll last for a while like that, just with a piece of masking tape. It'll give you a snug fit again. So hopefully that helps. Sandy texture. So if you're getting a sandy texture when painting base coat, either you have too thick of a consistency of your base coat or you're spraying with too high of a pressure. All right, so make sure your consistency is mixed properly. And I show you how to mix paint and look at the consistency by the drips, by eyeballing it with drips. I feel like that's so much more accurate looking at it than one-to-one, because sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you need more reducer. Even if you're following the mixing ratios on the can, sometimes you need more reducer. It's a fact. So either you got to reduce your paint a little bit, bring down your air pressure to about 24 to 25, trigger pulled. So, trigger pulled, you got your air line hooked up, air is coming out, you're reading your gauge, it's showing 24 to 25 pounds here. That's the pressure you want to be using with base coat. Sometimes less also. I've sprayed base coat with the X88 Adams here, 18 to 20 pounds, and it comes out really nice. So, depending on the gun. But normal guns, you're going to be spraying at 24 to 26 pounds with base coat. And then with clear coat, I like to up it up a little bit, 28, 27, 28, maybe 29 PSI, but very rarely. Mostly 27, 28 pounds is the golden pocket, so to say. So I just answered your question, Smitty Smith. Yo, Smithy. Did my first custom paint job came out great, but then when I put my badge back on, something ate through the paint only one side. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about the emblem? Maybe you put too much emblem adhesive glue on it and when you stuck it on, or maybe you used two-way tape. I'm not sure what you did there, bro. It's only when I'm trying to blend the pearl that I get a sandy texture. Yeah, again, it's hard for me to tell what you're doing without actually looking at what you're doing. So if you guys want to take the time to make a video or show me the next time you do a project, film it, and then you send it to me, then I can help you out so much. Do I need to put sealer over primer surfacer if I went down to bare metal, then epoxy, then primer surfacer? No, you don't have to. You could finish primer surfacer. If you're using a 2K filler primer, that's a fantastic foundation to paint over. Okay, so as long as you finish that with a 400 grit, if you're going to be painting base coat, clear coat, you're fine. But if you're sanding down and you got a couple of metal spots showing or some body filler showing, hey, yeah, you could finish off with a sealer in the booth or in your garage right before you paint. I recommend a 1K sealer. Nason has a good cheap 1K sealer. Comes in a can. You don't even have to mix it. Well, you do have to stir it up in the can, but you don't have to mix it with a reducer or a hardener or anything. That's it, 1K. You just mix it up in the can, strain it, put it in your cup, and hit all those spots, all these spots that are showing a little bit of body filler cutting through or metal spots or whatever. You could even do the whole panel if you want, whatever. But Nason makes a great 1K sealer. I don't have any in stock at the moment. But it's pretty much my go-to sealer before putting, you could paint single stage over it, base coat, clear coat, waterborne, whatever. Yes, it was my Harley. And when I stuck it on, it left it for 5 minutes and it came back and it ate through everything. Man, maybe you should have used like a two-way tape. I don't know what kind of glue you use there, bro. That seemed like a pretty nasty. I used 3M glue adhesive on my tank for the Harley. To put maybe you put too much, man. Guys, when you guys are putting any type of badges back on your vehicle after a paint job, number one, make sure your paint is cured for at least a week. Okay. Number two, you only need to put dots. Like if this was my badge, I would literally put like a couple dots around it and then stick it on because it ain't gonna go anywhere. I've seen some guys like literally like put gobs and gobs. I'm like, God. And then they push it on. Like, I remember I was at this guy's body shop and he had a new kid working for him, putting on badges. I'm like, oh my God. It's like the timing. I came in there and he loaded it and he pushed it on and the glue came outside the badge. And it was even worse because it was like a Toyota Tacoma badge, chrome badge. And it went through the lettering. And like, it didn't eat up the paint. He was using emblem and adhesive glue. I'm not sure if that's the one you used, but it's a more of a mild glue and it won't eat through the paint. But then like it screwed up the whole thing because there was glue in between the letters and it was like so horrible. And I left, I got out of there before my buddy saw what he did to yell at him. It was ridiculous. Does Zula sell the needle kit for the Atom X27? Yes, they do. Go check it out and check out. I think it's under accessories. Let me see. Accessories. Spray gun rebuild kits. Yep. Spray gun rebuild kits under accessories, guys. You'll see it. Are you asking me for the best clear for candy paint protection? I would just use a clear coat that has some built-in UV in it. And a lot of the clear coats nowadays have that. Sherman-Williams, DuPont, PPG, a lot of them already have UV protection, but you can also buy UV additive if you want to put a little extra. The only issue with that is it turns the clear a little bit yellow, but it's not to where it's going to be noticeable on your paint job. It is what it is. Very tint of yellow. Do you have any videos for small spot paint? Yes, I do. We have spot repair and blending, all that stuff, and Learn Autobody VIP. Guys, check out VIP, guys. If you get this free training, VIP currently right now is only $47. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday. Don't forget to like, comment down below. Talk to you soon. Peace. Have a good one, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week.